Welcome to week 3 of our MOOC on gender and mining governance. My name is Ege Tekinbas and I'm the Gender Equality Advisor for the Intergovernmental Forum on Mining, Minerals, Metals and Sustainable Development, or the IGF for short. This week's lecture will focus on good practices to prevent gender-based violence in the mining sector. During lesson 3, we explored qualitative and also anecdotal evidence suggesting a correlation between gender-based violence and mining operations. The lesson provided us with an understanding of different forms of gender-based violence and elaborated on the overwhelming literature aiming to uncover the reasons behind this correlation. As a quick recap, let's remember these factors. The first one of these factors is the male-dominated workforces and in migration associated with mostly male and transient workforces. Secondly, social and economic changes, including transitions to cash economies, fly-in, fly-out working schemes, and changing status of women has an important impact. And thirdly, presence of armed security forces. Not to forget that mining operations may take place in armed conflict zones or post-conflict zones. The impacts of gender-based violence cross-cut women involved in all stages of mining. This includes women in the large-scale mining workforce, women in communities, and women in artisanal and small-scale mining and supply chains. This multifaceted nature of gender-based violence requires for concerted response that brings together governments, international organizations, civil society organizations, and the industry. In this lecture, I will try to provide you with a snapshot of good examples that could be undertaken by companies in cooperation with governments and civil society. Please bear in mind, these examples are not comprehensive of all recommendations that we have covered in this course, but these are rather a deep dive for some tools and mechanisms included amongst these recommendations. As we have learned in this lesson, companies are expected to address various forms of gender-based violence. Preventing sexual exploitation and abuse is a human rights obligation that companies must ensure for the safety and security of the communities in which they operate. As you have seen in this week's lesson, it is recommended that companies assess these risks in the project development phase and include appropriate measures within their grievance redress mechanisms. This requires diligence and good understanding of entrenched social and contextual barriers related to gender. To start with, a gender-responsive grievance redress mechanism must ensure the anonymity and confidentiality of those who want to report an incident. A mechanism that fails to ensure anonymity and confidentiality will not only be redundant, but will also put the safety and security of survivors in jeopardy. And in a way-to example aimed at addressing this risk included accessible mobile applications where survivors can anonymously raise their grievances directly to the relevant authorities. Such mobile applications would use encryption and therefore would not disclose the identities of individuals, meaning that they would safeguard anonymity and confidentiality of the complainants while offering a platform for direct feedback. Another approach that can be promoted is to collaborate with third-party women's organizations who are already experienced in providing counseling and referral for gender-based violence cases. Beyond providing anonymity and confidentiality, such partnership could offer a safe haven for those in need of counseling support, as well as emergency support, such as provision of rape kits and referrals. This approach can also result in increased reporting rates because these organizations would be already well respected within local communities, and therefore they will be able to provide a safe space for women. Companies should ensure they have analyzed the local legal framework around gender-based violence and they have mapped existing service providers before the design of the grievance redress mechanism. This is fundamentally essential since an efficient mechanism must lay out all possibilities and associated pathways in detail. Accordingly, the grievance redress mechanism can be accompanied with specific protocols detailing various possibilities. These possibilities could include, for example, sexual exploitation and abuse crimes committed against minors, or cases that oblige reporting to the local law enforcement even in the absence of the content of the survivor. Although these issues are very unpleasant to talk about, they are also critical to plan ahead, as they require an understanding of the local legal context and the international human rights framework at the same time. We can also mention of some good practices related to grievance mechanisms. For example, a very good strategy is to provide training on women's rights and gender sensitivity to all staff involved in the grievance mechanism. Another good practice is to appoint female staff to participate in the management of the grievance mechanism and to ensure that gender-based violence-related complaints are handled only by these women staff. Promoting the grievance mechanism with women's groups in the community and allow women to be accompanied or represented by a trusted third party when bringing a grievance is another good practice example. It is also recommended to establish protocols with local or central administration who is in charge of service provision related to gender-based violence and with women's organizations and civil society organizations providing support and counseling for survivors. And last, if local legislation obliges reporting to the law enforcement for certain forms of complaints, such as rape or sexual assaults against minors, ensure that community women know and understand this obligation in advance. But this is not the end of the story. There is more to do if we want to drive change. Another good practice to ensure safety and security of community women is to focus on training and staffing of security officers in charge of mining areas. While these measures that I will soon be speaking about mainly target companies, they can as well be undertaken by governments deploying security forces in mining zones. To start with, it is highly recommended to develop a code of conduct that is to be signed by all security staff, and even better, by all employees involved in mining operations. A code of conduct is highly instrumental in ensuring security officers understand the different forms of gender-based violence with a focus on sexual harassment and sexual exploitation and abuse. The code of conduct can also shed further light on the consequences that such actions may bring along. Accordingly, a good code of conduct should depict which actions are considered as gender-based violence and which legal and corporate actions will be applicable in cases where such actions are committed. Employees, and especially security officers, should be provided with an orientation training where they are offered a detailed explanation of the code of conduct and be required to sign it only after fully understanding its content. Such training can easily be a part of the occupational health and safety training all employees are required to undergo. The information should be supported by the local legislative framework and must be offered in local languages spoken by those targeted. According to the International Finance Corporation, raising security officers' awareness about their obligations related to preventing gender-based violence can indeed help prevent sexual harassment and sexual exploitation and abuse. This awareness raising can also lead to ensuring the acceptance of their presence by local communities. Some good practices include cooperation with local, national, or international civil society for the design and development of such training and awareness-raising programs. A cooperation that has been preferred by multiple companies has been the White Ribbon Campaign, an international prevention, advocacy, and accreditation program originally initiated in Canada by a group of men who wanted to demonstrate their commitment to fighting violence against women. The case studies in this MOOC also showcase mining companies seeking the assistance of civil society or mandated international organizations such as UN Women to receive training and advocacy materials targeting their employees or communities in which their operations take place. Good practices also include employment of women security officers. According to the International Finance Corporation, some companies have had success in improving cultural acceptance and reducing tensions by hiring female security guards. This is particularly true in situations where there are frequent interactions between guards and women from the community. Such measures highlight the companies, but also government's commitment to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and international human rights frameworks, including UN guiding principles on business and human rights. Last but not least, I want to draw your attention to another positive trend. Companies have begun supporting their employees who have experienced forms of domestic violence, including intimate partner violence. Supporting survivors of domestic violence with counseling and paid leave is not only a good business practice that can eventually increase profitability and productivity, but also a sound commitment to sustainable development goals and international human rights frameworks. Overall, let me remind you that these measures are only a snapshot of good practices that are recommended to be undertaken by the industry. The critical message of this lecture is the importance of cooperation and partnership. Most of the good practices included in this lecture rely on combined expertise, combined know-how, and combined efforts of various stakeholders, including governments, international organizations, civil society, and the industry. If we need to pick one single and most important takeaway from today's lecture, it should be the added value that partnership and cooperation can offer when it comes to preventing gender-based violence in the mining sector. Thank you very much for listening.